On the face of it, the two readings might seem very different. One is Jesus talking about some rich bloke getting richer. The other is some guy talking about taking tips, or not in that case, at a supermarket. To me, however, they both seem to cover the same principle. A full life is not measured by the things you have. In the first reading, Jesus is telling a story about a rich man getting richer, to the point where he is considering retiring, sitting back and just enjoying his wealth. Yeah, sounds pretty good to me. But then God pops up and bursts his bubble. He tells him he's going to die. In fact, that very night. What a downer. Best year ever this bloke's had, and he's going to die. Kind of sucks. However, I guess the story gets the point across. But then I thought, well, what exactly is the point? What is the point he's trying to get across? Perhaps the point is that God is a big old killjoy. When you're really having a good time, when you're really enjoying yourself, God will come along and royally rain on your parade. No, I don't believe that for a second. Jesus often speaks of how God wants us to have a happy, joy-filled life, and even coined the phrase about God doing all things for our good. Doesn't sound too much like a Grinch to me. I may throw in the occasional movie reference during this sermon. Is the point that we shouldn't save up? That we shouldn't store things away for the future? Sounds like my kind of philosophy, actually. But then I'm one of these people for whom money just burns holes in every single pocket I've ever had. But it seems a bit unlikely to me that, given God created everything, that they would then want us to just live now, use everything up, burn it all up, and not worry about tomorrow. Doesn't seem like the kind of God that I've got to know. And much of what we are told about God points to a longer term planning. I mean, we often hear about, what's my place in that plan? Have I seen a part of God's plan? What is God's plan? So it doesn't seem to me that God is part of the live fast, burn out very soon brigade. So what is the point? I guess we'll all have our own thoughts on what the point of the story is, our own takeaway of it. But for me, the point is kind of encapsulated in the very last line. So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich towards God. I sat there and I looked at that line and I thought, I haven't a clue what it means. Alright, storing up treasure for yourself, fair enough, but being rich towards God? Now, it might seem that Jesus was pushing the old, give money in the collection, give money to God. The more you give, the closer you are to God. And many churches have done very well out of that line over the years. Maybe you read it as Jesus saying that if you give generously on Sunday, you are well in with God. It's a nice thought. All you have to do is give a bit of money on Sunday, and that's it. You're right up there with God. Place in heaven assured. Down payment on a place in paradise. Awesome. It's better than buying a house. Even in MCC, we have the time, talents and treasures criteria for being a member. And generally, it's assumed that treasures mean money. I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. But to me, being rich towards God, or perhaps a better wording for it in my mind, is being generous in giving to God. Now those two things kind of mean the same thing, but are very, very different. It's much, much more than a Sunday offering. In fact, it's way more than just money. To me, being generous and giving to God includes your everyday actions. Whether it's saying hello to the guy who begs up at the train station. His name is JP, by the way. See him sat out the back there. Just say hi. Say Andrew says hi. Or helping someone to lift a pushchair up and down stairs. Or even just holding a door for someone. All of these are acts of generosity towards another. And therefore towards God. After all, Jesus did say, whatsoever you do for the least of these, you do for me. So whatever we do for other people, we're doing for Christ, we're doing for God. I believe that's the point he was trying to make there. The point he was making to the crowd, and especially to the loudmouth at the back who wanted him to strong-arm his brother into giving him more money. Sorry, the man who was after his family inheritance. And I don't think it's not that we shouldn't get rich, but we shouldn't save up or keep stuff for the future, the next generation. But that we should share whatever we do have, in whatever way we can. I'm not proposing we all go off and be like a monk, give away all our worldly possessions and just walk the earth being nice to people. No. But what I am saying is we shouldn't be misers. We shouldn't be hoarding our treasures, hiding them away, a bit like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. But enjoy them, share them, live generously. Otherwise, we might just find out we turn out like Gollum, living no life at all, just holding on to our own form of precious. Oh, I've been dying to get that in somewhere. Personally, if I have enough money to meet my needs, I quite happily give a decent tip to people, to the delivery man. Although generally that's with SJ's money, so it has even less effect on me, but it's still very generous. Or to a waiter, or even in the shopkeeper when they go to give me the change, I say, no, put it in the charity box. Why not? Seems a simple enough thing, but builds your spirit of generosity.
Well, just lightness of coins in your pocket.
And the fact of tips brings us very neatly into the second reading. Yes, this was thought out. And the lesson this man learned in generosity. Well, I'm calling it a lesson in receiving generously, because that, to me, is what the reading seemed to be about. It wasn't so much about the man giving, it was about the fact that this guy had never received these things in a generous way. He'd always handed them back. Oh no, you got less than me, take it back, sort of thing. In the reading, the author receives what he calls a teaching, a valuable lesson about giving and receiving. He learns that the tips that he'd been offered are as much about the giver as they are about him. He clearly thought he was a really nice guy, slipping them back in their shopping bags or giving them back to people, refusing them. In fact, he even says he was proud of what he was doing. So it's no wonder that he then felt ashamed when this bloke kind of served him a lesson. After all, I guess he would then be wondering, how had he made all those other people feel? The people whose shopping bag he'd slipped the tip back into, in particular, and they get home, unpack, and there's the money. Would they be insulted? Or did they think that the amount was too small and that he was insulted, which is why he threw it back at the back? I don't know, all these things can go through your head. We can never know what's in other people's minds. But I do know that in the past, when I've offered people something, whether it's a coffee, a seat on a train or whatever, and they've turned around and flatly refused it, for, in my mind, no good reason, but that's in my mind, it can be quite hurtful. You can feel quite hurt by it. Because you're doing something just out of the goodness of your heart, and someone throws it back in your face almost. But then I think, well, you don't know what's going on in their mind. So they think, actually, he looks a bit of an old codger, he probably needs the seat more than I do. I don't know. To me, the lesson is that receiving generously is every bit as important as giving generously. The other week, not last week, the week before I believe it was, when we had the hot sausage rolls from Greg's, I took them out in a bag, and with bags of sausage rolls, and walked around the level giving them out to all the guys I could find, all the homeless guys. And when I got up to by the trees where there's normally a little encampment, two of the guys said, opened up the bag of sausage rolls I gave them. I said, oh, you have one. And I was about to say no thanks, because A, I was walking around and supposed to be getting back here, but also didn't really fancy a sausage roll at that point. But something caused me to pause, and I stopped and I thought about it. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? So they gave me a sausage roll, and the smile on their faces when I said yes, thank you, was incredible. And I sat and we ate together and we chatted and we had a good laugh. And I can't help but think, if I'd said no, what impact would that have had? Not only on that day, but also on future meetings with these guys, because you tend to bump into the same guys. So, thinking about it when I was writing this sermon, it seems to me that it was really important to them that I wasn't just some, Bobby do-gooder who's popping up round the level, spreading bounty, saying, here, have some food, have a sausage roll on me because I'm such a good guy, and wandering off, all proud of myself and cheerful and smiling. It was more important to them that actually I was a guy who wanted to sit down, spend some time with them, even eat with them, which is very rare around here, and just chat. The fact that I happened to have sausage rolls as well was definitely a bonus, obviously. But it was that interaction, that personal interaction, that was more important. So that was a huge lesson learned by me. So lately, well, at least for 3 weeks now, we've been talking about giving. I think, unless I've got the sermon series completely wrong, it's been about giving. Giving of our time, giving of our talents, and today, obviously, giving of our treasures. We have heard Jesus talking about not just hoarding them, and Mr. Moffitt, that is the guy who worked at the supermarket, did the tips, in case you've forgotten, about not making assumptions about them. I even mentioned how treasure is usually taken to mean money, and I do believe I said I would come back to this point. We're there. Treasures are not just money. A treasure is anything we value highly. So a treasure is as individual as we are. Perhaps it's something we value above all other things. As we heard in the song earlier, where your treasure is where your heart is. And that's very true, because it's something that you value. And of course, the other saying that's true is one man's treasure is another man's trash. We only have to look at, the past and how the West managed to swap beads for huge tracts of land to know that that's true. So different people value different things. And if we look at it from that perspective, it gives us a whole new view of treasures. A busy person will often value free time above all else. So if that person then volunteers somewhere, gives their time to others, then they have given generously of their treasure. A talented person will often value their product above all else, whether it be music, writing, or some tangible items, because they have spent a lot of time and effort achieving that ability. So if they donate a piece, such as the cross given to us by Jonathan's father, then they have given generously of their treasure. And then I came to money, and I suddenly thought, oh, hang on, so far those two, they fit really nicely, and you get to money and it becomes very tricky. Largely because it seems to me that people with and people without money, both groups value it incredibly highly, or can do. Just as, I guess, both groups can give it no value at all. There will be people in either group. There will be rich people that actually don't value money that much and give away a lot, do a lot, and there will be rich people who hang on to it like grim death. And there will be poor people who scrimp and scrape and hang on to every penny, and other poor people that put everything they've got into something, whether it be a charity or a collection box. So then I thought, well, I guess all we can really do is, being Christians, take Christ's direction on this. And I'm reminded of the story of the old lady who just had 2 coins to her name, and yet she puts them into the temple collection. And Jesus said, well, she has given the most because she has given everything. So perhaps it's how much you give depending on how much you have. I don't know. I'm not sure someone somewhere has come up with a formula for it, a percentage of money held against money given equals heaven or something, I don't know. Well, it's possible. I'm sure there's a university somewhere giving a grant for looking into that. Yeah, I know. But anyway. So I guess perhaps what I'm getting at is how much you can spare without causing yourself hardship, is how I would term it. If you can give, great. If you can give money, marvellous. Everyone needs money, don't they? To keep things running. We need money to do this. So if you can give money, brilliant. But it's not as important as giving of the treasures. And like I said, treasures is not just money. So we circle back to my earlier statement about how a full life is not dependent on what we have or don't have as much as it is on what we do or do not give. That's a slightly longer version of my earlier statement for those that are counting, but it kind of encapsulates it. I truly believe that if we have a generous spirit, like the man with the kids in the second reading, and give freely of our time, talents and treasures as we are able, and if we also learn to receive generously when we are offered them by others in turn, something which is difficult at times, then we will have a full, fulfilling, joyful life, as Jesus promised. However, and yes, there's always a however, obviously. In the second reading, the author mentions it took him many years to make the teaching he received his own. By which I think he means it took him many years to actually make it part of his life, and make it part of his attitude, perhaps. So, I guess I'm going to finish with a question for everybody. All of us, myself included. And that question is, what do I need to do to achieve that generosity of spirit? Thank you.